Good evening, everybody. We are now call the meeting to order because it's 7 o'clock and you will be able to speak after this. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee. My name is Penny Rivers and I will be chairing the meeting this evening. Members and officers, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. And please, can I also ask that any questions are kept brief and to the point, and that ward councillors sit separately from the committee when their applications are being considered and voted on. And to vote, you must be in this room and listen to all presentations and all representations and be seen to do so. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence, Kim.
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Alan Morrison, no substitutes.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the last meeting. Do you agree the minutes? Yes. Thank you. Declarations of interest, Kim?
Yes. None received prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And agenda item 4, questions by members of the public. Are there any?
None received.
Thank you. And there are no questions submitted by members. So we move to agenda item number 6, any relevant updates to government guidance or legislation since we last met. Claire, are there any?
No, Chair, there are no updates.
Wonderful. And appeals update. This item is to note. Do you so do? Councillor Coburn.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to indicate at the minutes bit, but it applies to both, really. It's interesting reading the appeals report to see the precision with which the inspectors and, of course, as we know, the KCs at appeals look at our words. Whenever we do the minutes, we really are going to have to use our words really carefully. I mean, the one I was thinking of was the green belt, where, you know, character has nothing to do with the green belt. You know, that's all to do with, you know, sort of harm to the intrinsic quality of it. And, you know, when you just read the inspectors, you see that we have got to be really precise about whether it's character and appearance and which policy that is, whether it's greenbelt. And, you know, we cannot be, sort of, especially, you know, the danger we're in at the moment, you know, we must be specific in our minutes, and people, and I'm talking to myself here, you know, must really check the minutes and make sure that they actually say what we think we said, so that when it goes to appeal, if it goes to appeal, you know, we have half a chance of winning. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we come to our applications. The first is WA 2024-02264, land at 3839 the Borough of Farnham. This is a change of use and alterations to an existing commercial building to provide 6 residential units. Dana, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, everyone. So the first item, application number 2024-02264 at 38-39 the Borough in Farnham for change of use and alterations to existing commercial building to provide 6 residential units with parking and associated landscaping, installation of vehicle entrance gates, retention of ground floor and basement for commercial units as amended by plans and documents received on the 21st of February 2025 and the 24th of March. The first slide is the site location. On the left-hand side, it has the site line outlined in red, and on the other side there is an aerial view of the site which is shaded in blue. That's the location in the Farnham Town Centre, so you can see where it is in relation to other venues in town centre, the supermarkets, the university, Castle Street right across, and all the shops on West Street. Next slide has the existing and proposed site plan. So we got the existing on the left showing the site as it is at the moment. So it's the outline of the building and the parking spaces. And on the right-hand side, the site plan as proposed. So the office space at the rear of the former NatWest building would be divided into 6 residential units with associated parking, landscaping, bike shed and refuse. Existing basement and ground floor plan, and proposed basement and ground floor plan. And it's not showing a close-up of this plan because it shows the windows on the eastern side elevation at both ground and first floor levels will be fixed shut and have an advanced additional glazing system that would prevent the outdoor noise generated by the existing business impacting the residential units. The existing first and second floor plans and the proposed first and second floor plans, again, a detail of the plan showing those windows on the eastern side elevation will have the same advanced glazing unit, acoustic glazing units as the ones on the ground floor. Existing roof plan and proposed roof plan. So the only alterations would be the insertion of 5 roof lights, 2 4-wheel stars and 1 flat one. This is the existing and proposed elevation 1, which is the front of the building that will remain entirely unchanged as part of this proposal. The front of the building is grade 2 listed. And this is a photograph of the building as it looks now. Existing elevation 2, there are quite a few elevations due to the shape of the building, and proposed elevation 2. So there's some alterations to the fenestration, and on the first floor level, the door has been changed to a window. What it doesn't show here, but I have got the photograph, is that currently there is a terrace and quite a big and unsightly plant unit that will be removed as part of the proposal. The window will be fixed shut up to 1.7 meters about the floor level of the room it serves, and it will be also obscurely glazed. Oops, excuse me. And the terrace will not be accessible except for maintenance when they would have to give notice to the occupier of the flats above the NatWest, which is in different ownership. There's some photographs of that part of the building, and also some photographs of the plant unit, which is not shown on the plan, which is quite big and unsightly. So it will be an improvement to the occupiers of that flat that currently look directly out to this plant from their windows. This is the third elevation, existing and proposed. The only difference is the insertion of two roof lights. And again, there's some photographs of that part of the building. The existing elevations 4 and 5, and proposed elevations, the only difference being the 2 roof lights again inserted on that side, and the window will be replaced. And again, there's our photographs of those elevations. Existing elevations 6 and 7, there are some of the smaller elevations. The only difference at elevation 6 is the insertion of a door at ground floor level, which will serve one of the residential units, and a new window at first floor level to match the existing windows. Again, these are the current photographs of that part of the building. That's where the new window will go. And elevations, there's some small return elevations. There are no changes proposed to them inside the courtyard. There's also proposed gates and railings to separate the existing car park to the new development. And the matters for considerations are the impact on visual amenity, street scene and character of the area, the impact on neighboring amenity, parking and highway safety. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and a legal agreement to secure the SPA contributions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers. The first is Mr. David Quick. I think you're online, Mr. Quick.
Good evening.
You have 4 minutes to speak from when you start.
Okay. Good evening, committee. I would like to be there, but I'm away in France, so I have to do this by Zoom. Yeah, my name is David Quick. I speak as the freeholder and owner of Borelli's Wine Bar and Restaurant, which adjoins the former NatWest building. I also own a property and reside in Borelli Mews next to the rear of the former NatWest building and courtyard. I've owned and operated my successful business for the last 30 years and remain the longest serving licensee in the town to this day. I'm also the treasurer of Pub Watch and also the chairman of, for nearly 15 years, working with the police and dealing with all antisocial behaviour issues in the town around since 1997. With our current licence in place inside and outside, which has been running since 1997, virtually without any noise complaint throughout the last almost 30 years. We cater mainly for diners and drinkers by day and by night. However, on Friday and Saturday nights from 9 p.m. till 1 a.m, we become a very busy, popular music venue. And we are always at full capacity every weekend, with music volume being increased to suit the ambience of the bar with our courtyard, which is always at full capacity. Our French doors to the rear of our property, for which we got planning permission, are always opened in the spring and summer. And plus we also have to have queues to get into our venue, because we have to do count out for our license. And we also have many passers-by who walk Castle Street and the borough. This is a regular activity every weekend, so the courtyard is very, very busy, and obviously that does attract noise every weekend. We also run many private functions for celebrations for 40 to 50 people on our first floor. The wall separating our restaurant and the proposed bedrooms in the former NatWest building would result in serious noise complaints, whatever soundproofing measures were put in, I suspect. This obviously, of course, is vital trading time for our business, especially in these tough times, with operating costs having more than doubled since COVID. For any restrictions to be imposed upon our business now would undoubtedly result in closure and would reduce the value of my freehold and the business considerably. May I remind everyone that Borelli Yard was built in 1987 for retail and commercial purposes only, and that remains to this day. Never way back in 1999 when I purchased the freehold of Borelli's did I imagine the bank to close and be sold for residential purposes. To allow any residential to encroach into our wonderful courtyard would obviously bring serious consequences. There would for sure be a serious conflict of interest between the new residents, and we would also be held to account for late night noise of passers-by, which would not be connected with Borelli's in any way. And after witnessing the restrictive conditions imposed on the slug and lettuce at Cambridge Place off of East Street, they were imposed with conditions on their backyard. So excuse me. And that I feel could be detrimental to Borelli's also should these residential units go ahead.
Thank you.
Now,
Mr.
after witnessing the restrictive conditions imposed on the slogan lettuce, sorry, I've already just said that. The main thing here is that to propose kitchen and dining rooms and bedroom windows right adjacent to my main entrance, and then running the full length of the courtyard, it would massively impose on the privacy of my business and my patrons, and likewise for the new residents of these proposed units.
Can you
Also,
wrap
the
up, Mr.
proposal
Quick,
to-
please?
Sorry.
You've gone over your 4 minutes, Mr. Quick. So
Oh
if
dear,
you-
I was nearly at the end.
Yes,
Okay.
if you could just wrap up as quickly as possible, please.
If I can wrap up. So I urge the planning committee to refuse this inappropriate application and to ensure that the courtyard remains as a commercial space for Farnham residents and visitors to enjoy without the risk of closure for many years ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Mr. Derek Copeman. And you also have 4 minutes to speak from when you start.
Thank you very much. All I'd like to say to David is that as an architect with an enormous, too many years experience working in busy areas with mixed use developments, the first consideration we placed when looking at the design of this scheme was the compatibility of residential and your own business, sir. There is absolutely no intention to create a situation whereby your business is in any way threatened by would-be complaints. We have gone to enormous lengths to consider how the plans are considered, how the fabric is designed, and with modern window design, a single window with a modern three levels of insulation will provide sufficient sound insulation, coupled with insulation that will be placed on the inner surfaces of the walls to protect the residents of those properties or would-be properties from the noise from the outside. However, we have put in a secondary system of, again, approved glazing, which would in itself provide sufficient sound insulation. I noticed from your letter that you would like to be present at the present when the sound test is done in accordance with BS 8233. Absolutely happy with that. We obviously will have to conduct the sound testing prior to occupation at a suitable time when the area is completely busy and full, as you say. The secondary outlooks of those windows on the ground floor, all of the windows are obscure glazed and to 1.7 meters above internal floor levels. So as I say, an enormous amount of effort has gone into applying technological solutions and practical solutions to ensure that the two uses are compatible. And in fact, the two uses being compatible is part of the charm of the area. So in summary, I hear your objections. I understand those considerations, but we have considered all of those. And I can assure you, sir, if we comply with the condition that has been properly imposed on us to do so, you will not have an unwelcome resident next to you. In fact, you'll probably find 6 new customers. But that's how I look at it. Absolutely, we have to consider together. And that is a prima facie consideration when going through this design. So that's really it. I'm absolutely happy to work with you, and I'll ensure that we allow you to be present at all testing, and we'll work with you and consult with you in the normal process as the development proceeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Copeman. We have no other speakers, so committee, it's your turn to debate. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I read the letters of objection from Borelli's customers with interest and did a little bit of research as you do. And paragraph 200 of the NPPF states that planning decisions should ensure that new development can be integrated effectively with existing businesses and community facilities. Existing businesses and facilities should not have unreasonable restrictions placed upon them as a result of development permitted after they were established. Where the operation of an existing business or community facility would have a significant adverse effect on the new development, including changes of use in its vicinity, the applicant should be required to provide suitable mitigation before the development has been completed. And I think we've heard just now from Mr. Copeman that the applicant is and has gone to considerable lengths to provide that mitigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose every Farnham councillor should really have declared an interest, because I can't be the only one who's drunk and done various other things at Borelli's over the years. But it is, you know, a business that we do cherish in all seriousness. And in fact, Borelli Yard is a development we all cherish. I don't think we have a great deal of choice here. What worries me about this development is not this particular development as such, but it's the cumulative effect. I mean, we always knew that once the centre of gravity changed with East Street, we would have a sort of follow-up and buildings would change use. I mean, that was something we knew. The problem's going to arise when you have so much new development with no parking whatsoever. This has got parking, so I'm not blaming this. And all of a sudden, you know, we're going to end up with no spaces for anybody. And it does worry me that there's no overall plan for the town at the moment. We just get 6 here, 8 here, 24 there. They all plead poverty and they can't possibly do any parking, and it's town centre, so why would you put any in anyway? And of course, it all adds to the chaos. But coming back to the issues, I think I have to agree with Councillor Clark here. You know, this is always going to be developable. How it should be developed is, you know, up to the applicant, and I think they have done all they can. But, you know, I just hope it all works, because quite frankly, you know, as I say, when you've got something as treasured as Borelli's, and it is, I mean, and it's you know, it has been special for so many years. We really can't have anything that detracts from that. So hoping that what we're being told is correct, I don't think we have any choice but to accept this in planning terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Apologies, I have flu, so I sound awful. But I agree with Councillor Coburn. Just my sort of 2 cents on my thoughts on it is that I'm obviously very pro building on brownfield above greenbelt, but I'm also pro protection of our high streets. And just on the point of protection of our high streets, and I know that mitigation measures have been mentioned, but I do think times are particularly tough for SMEs and hospitality outfits and independent retailers. And I've recently seen a fair few pubs and restaurants close because residents have moved in opposite the pub, complained numerous times, and a struggling pub continues to struggle until it just gives up. And I think it might, you know, housing is incredibly important, but housing in the wrong place is detrimental to local business. And I think something like this will set a bit of a dangerous precedent on what it means to have a high street. And like Carol mentioned, that, you know, about a spatial plan or a plan for Farnham as a whole, I just think that if we let housing continue to cover our high street, it will no longer be a high street. It will just be another housing lane. And then what, you know, our whole argument is to protect the high street, and I don't think this necessarily does protect the high street. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gale and then Councillor Beaman.
I noticed that the Borelli Yard has covenants that restricts them to only commercial use. I'm wondering how this might affect the actual development of residential, because it is a covenant. I know they're not taken into account, but how strong is that covenant?
If we just come in on that answer, the presence of a covenant would be a matter outside the planning system and isn't material to you determining this application this evening. It may mean that the covenant will impact the ability for the applicant to implement the permission, but that in itself wouldn't be a reason for you to not grant a planning permission.
Thank you, Councillor Beaman, followed by Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yeah, towns are changing, aren't they? I mean, town centres are changing in the sense there's now more residential development, and in fact, there's also a shift away from retail, perhaps to things like hospitality outlets. And I mean, I can understand the great concerns that David Quick has elaborated in his 4 minutes to us, and the concerns also of Fountain Council for that matter. But I do believe, I think we have to take the word, in fact, of the applicant or agent that they have put in mitigation measures, and this will not lead to the great fear that Mr. Quick has. Actually, I'll just say is that we need to monitor this very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with Councillor Beeman has said. I think, David, you know, obviously it is a very important business to the town, and it's something that we treasure. And so I think we've said enough today. I'm reasonably confident that there will be protection, and it will be covered off correctly. When this came before Farnham as a consultee, I did get on my soapbox again, and it would appear that nobody listened. But I have a problem with I have a problem with 3-bedroom properties in the middle of the town. I realise from the developer's point of view, as I have experience, I realise from the developer's point of view that it's got to be viable for the sales and the marketplace. But I do want to take opportunity just to make a broader point over the planning authority's overall view on this one, because what are we going to do with Farnham moving forward? We are going to get a lot more of these projects coming through, commercial buildings which will require change of class to residential. And I think they do. I think these schemes are very good. I mean, Bishop's Table, it's been done very well. I think it's fine. But the two things that I'm concerned about, one is parking, because at some point we're going to get to a point where there isn't parking. And we all know what happened to the Woolmead, because there was insufficient parking, the Woolmead was stopped. And then the other point really is the size of accommodation, affordable housing. I just don't see this in lights to the borough authority about what we are doing about affordable housing. And I would have expected at least in that development to see some 1-bed or studio accommodation that allows couples to live there, and probably be prepared to pay a premium for that property because of its location. They might not even need a car. And they would use the local facilities. So I'm not going to block this. It's going to happen. It's going to be there. But I do want to put a marker down and say, please, can we give consideration to affordable housing, and by that smaller square footage, 1-bed studios and 2 beds maximum within the town. I think 3 beds is not required. Thank you.
Thank you, but I guess you do not have an objection. That's what you're saying. To this application?
No, thank you. I don't have an objection. I was just getting on my soapbox. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Could I, excuse me, can I just ask the case officer to confirm the number of beds within each of the 6 dwellings?
Thank you. There is a breakdown in my report. So we've got 2-bed, 3 people units. So that means a double and a single bedroom. We've got 2 4-bedroom, 7 people units, a 3-bed, 4-person unit, and a 2-bed, 4-person unit. So in total, there'll be 3 2-beds, 1 3-bed, and 2 4-beds.
Councillor Coburn.
Thank you for letting me come back. I just really want to say partly in line with what I was saying before about the plan. One of the reasons we have problems with this Farnham is that there is not large property to downsize into. People would quite like to downsize into the town centre, and those with money have actually done it and thoroughly enjoy it. But there is a shortage. It's all very well to say we need 1 and 2 bedroom and we need everything. But, you know, I have no problem at all with larger properties in the town centre, because then people from the Bourne, where I live, can go into the town centre as they get older, have all the assets there, but they can't, you know, there's just no way they can downsize into some of the properties that are being built at the moment. They're much more for people starting up without the clutter. So, you know, this is why I talk about a plan. We need to think about what we're actually providing. You know, it's so difficult on this case-by-case basis that we end up with something that, yes, may suit somebody, but we're not really looking at the problem or the issues in Farnham as a whole, because there's an awful lot of people like us living in a house that really we shouldn't be living in, but, you know, we can't find anywhere to downsize. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
2 hands. Was there another? Or Councillor Steiger, you're a first-time speaker, so I'll take you first.
Yeah, it's just a quick question to the case officer. About the parking, is parking being lost from the central car park, or is this new car parking spaces that aren't currently being used by the public? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so the current area of car parking that's in the central car park is in the ownership of the applicant landowner. Is currently leased to the car park. So in effect, some parking spaces from the car park would be lost, but they are in the ownership of the applicant for this application.
Thank you, Councillor White.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, I am objecting. Forgive me, it's probably late in the day, but I was reading the government technical housing standards and I went down unit number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I've got 2, 3 beds. Sorry, they're stories anyway. But I do remember when this came forward. Yeah, 4 bedroom houses in the middle of Farnham. No. I just think it's no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands. So we have a recommendation that, subject to conditions and the completion of the undertaking, permission be granted. So please vote when the lights show.
Thank you. So the results are 10 in favour, 1 abstention and 1 against. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is carried. Our next application, which is WA 2024-02460 for Hedgehog Lane, has been withdrawn from this evening to allow the agents of the applicant to gather further information. So we move instead to WA 2025-00028, land at Springmere, Hindhead Road, Hazelmere. This is for the erection of 6 dwellings and the widening of the existing vehicle access with associated works following demolition of the dwelling and garage. Dana, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will go straight to the second slide, which shows the location of the site outlined in red. The blue line denotes land that is in the ownership of the applicant, excuse me, but it's outside the application site. And on the right-hand side, we've got an aerial view with the site shaded in blue. This is a map of Hazelmere settlement boundary, and it shows the site in a blue circle here. It's just outside the settlement boundary of Hazelmere. This is a map showing the site in the wider context of the settlement of Hazelmere goes through, still here, where I'm showing my cursor. So there's a build-up area to the south, to the north, and on each side. And this again is the aerial view of the same map shown in blue. Now we've got the existing and the proposed site plans. So you can just about see the outline of the existing house and annex. And on the other side, we see the proposed subdivision of the plot to accommodate 6 dwellings. The existing access would be widened, and all of the dwellings will be sited some 13 meters further into the land than the existing house is. All the dwellings will be afforded adequate parking provision, namely 3 parking spaces per dwelling. The driveways will be permeable, adequate private amenity area in excess of the minimum recommended. The separation distances range from 4.1 meter to 5.8 meter, so it's in excess of the minimum of 2 meter recommended in order to prevent the terracing effect and a cramped appearance. And the proposed density is 13 dwellings per hectares. Therefore, the proposal is not considered to result in the overdevelopment of the plot. The next slide shows the proposed site plan in color with some indicative landscaping. This is the existing house currently on site to be demolished. And this is the annex, which is quite substantial annex with a garage at ground floor level and accommodation above. Now I'm going to look at the different plots. These are the floor plans, for plot 1 and the elevations for plot 1. All dwellings will be 4 bedrooms over 2 levels and built into the topography of the site. Therefore, while there will be 2-story from the front, there will be 1-story from the rear. So again, if you look back at the site plans, we see that the first floor level is significantly bigger than the ground floor levels, so they are a lot smaller towards the rear. They will be of a similar design and character, a contemporary design. However, there will be 4 different designs to add visual interest to the development. The external materials would comprise of vertical timber, cladding above a lower section of brick or stone, with retaining walls, also built out of stone. The roofs would be slate with some photovoltaic panels each, and the fenestration would consist of black aluminium frames and composite doors. These type of materials are often used in countryside and landscape areas as they are successfully blending into the surroundings. This is plot 5, and we got plot 6. So you can see they are all of the same character, but slightly different design. And the next slide shows the proposed street scene. So you can clearly see the spaces between buildings. And the next slide is a photograph of what is there at the moment. This is the access, and the properties will be situated against the backdrop of trees. And this is the existing outbuilding. It is quite consistent, and it's just to note that they will be further back into the land, about 13 meters. So the further they go inland, the less prominent they appear from the street scene. Following are some views from the existing access looking towards the north and south of Hindhead Road. And some photographs of the site, and it's worth mentioning that it's already a development under construction for 2 dwellings. They form part of the land in Springmere, and they're quite substantially completed. So these are the 2 dwellings under construction viewed from within the site and from the street scene. Again, views of those dwellings which are substantially larger than the dwellings proposed. They're over 3 levels. And the relationship at the moment between the existing dwelling and those properties, bearing in mind the new dwellings will be in line more or less with those dwellings under construction. This is the existing dwelling on site and the existing outbuilding annex. And these are further views of the various buildings on site at the moment. The main matters for consideration are scale and design and impact on visual amenity, street scene and character of the area, the impact on residential amenity, parking and highway safety, trees and landscape, ecology and drainage. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and legal agreement to secure biodiversity net gain. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We have one speaker, Mrs. Mo Ashdown. You have 4 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. We live at Frensham Hall Lodge, a small cottage directly opposite the proposed development. The steep gradient of the land means that Springmere sits in a much elevated position to that of our small home. There are few properties in this stretch of countryside that are actually visible from the Hindhead Road. And until recently, Springmere, essentially a single-storey dwelling, was totally hidden by a thick screen of mature trees and afforded total privacy to our property. In 2021, when half the garden was sold off and a planning application for 2 dwellings was submitted, we didn't object. We aren't NIMBYs. We know that people have to live somewhere and that development is inevitable. These 2 houses have been under development for over 2 years. In 2023, permission was sought to demolish the existing house in the remaining portion of Springmere to make way for 2 properties. The original garden at Springmere, to my memory, is about 3 or 4 acres, so our 4 houses in that space didn't seem unreasonable. We replied neutrally, asking the developer to restore some screening by replanting mature specimen trees, and that parking during construction would be managed rather better than the chaos caused by the inconsiderate and sometimes dangerous parking and deliveries to the existing construction site on the other half of the property. In 2024, a further application to demolish the detached garage and build another 2 houses at Springmere was submitted, and this time we did object. We believe that the approach of submitting incremental planning applications for the same site was development by stealth, and that 6 houses, including the 2 under construction, was overdevelopment for the area. Which brings us to today. The application made in January of this year consolidates the applications made in 23 and 24 and adds another 2 houses, meaning that where once a single-storey house which could not be seen, 8 new, very large, very visible, overbearing 2-storey houses set further up a very steep hill will irrevocably change the nature of this stretch of the countryside beyond the green belt and removes our privacy. We object to this application to build 6 further houses at Springmere because it contravenes policy RE1 of the local plan. The 40-mile-an-hour speed limit on Hindhead Road does not make it easy to join the traffic. It's a daily battle and accidents happen more often than they should, the last occurring Friday of last week, just a little way beyond the Springmere gates. Prior to the application and the associated arboricultural surveys, extensive tree removal took place at Springmere with industrial quantities of timber craned out of the property, leaving it totally exposed and the previously hidden studio over the garage in clear sight. The proposed new houses appear to be further up the hill and therefore will be more visible and overlook us even more. During the winter storms, other mature trees on the site have fallen or are leaning dangerously. We are concerned that the loss of trees and the removal of more to be replaced by hard surfaces will decrease the runoff. Over the last 2 years or so, we've already experienced that. We know this because the roadway drains run through our property and our garden has flooded every time it rains because the inspection chamber is overwhelmed by the amount of surface water. Surrey Highways has had to replace it with a continuous pipe. It's a great result for us, but it then drains out onto a privately maintained tarmac road and then onto a series of ornamental lakes and streams. It's going to cause a problem. And I'm sure it'll cause new problems. So Hazelmere's neighbourhood plan states that the housing target can be delivered within the settlement boundary. Springmere is outside of the settlement boundary. So therefore, we believe you shouldn't grant it. Otherwise, what is the point of the Localism Act? Furthermore, the plan says that it should be done on brownfield sites before greenfield sites. Springmere can't be one. In addition, Hazelmere Town Council Planning Committee unanimously objected to the development. We're a lone voice in objecting to this. It's an illustration of the nature of the area, but thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Councillors Keane and Rubini, your ward members, do either of you wish to speak? Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank Mo Ashdown for her concise and very revealing talk just then. In fact, a lot of what I was going to say, she has already said. So I'll shorten mine so I don't waste any of your valuable time. I've seen this obviously coming in planning applications. It started off, as you heard, with 2, and it's now up to 8. So it's multiplied. What does that mean to us as a council? What about affordable? Oh, yes, of course. If you don't put it in straight away for that amount of housing you want, then you don't get the affordable. However, doing it bit by bit, and I don't know whether there'll be more applications, this means that presumably the developer will avoid any sort of affordable housing. That's wrong, because we need that type of housing. As you heard, this housing road, and it is now a road, whereas it wasn't before, is on countryside beyond the green belt. It is not in the settlement area, and we are trying hard to protect our green spaces. It is not a brownfield site. Although, of course, one house and a garage will be coming down, for which we want to replace it with 8 houses. Quite a change. That was my first point, that it's overdevelopment. The second part is the water. It's a very steep slope. Those photographs don't do it a lot of justice. It is a steep slope, I know it, I've been up there before. And the water runoff is severe. And we all know that water runoff is now increasing year by year because of the environmental change. So we're going to have more water, and it goes across the Hindhead Road, and that is a major road. It contains, although it's 40 miles an hour, and that's only recently been put on, then of course that used to be a wide open road. It takes a lot of heavy traffic. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the fact that they are 4-bedroom dwellings. You heard that. 6 houses, 4 bedrooms. Now, as I understand it across Waverley, they require 3-bedroom houses, 38%, 2-bedroom houses, 32%. So we drop down to 4-bedroom houses at 20%. So in fact, they are supplying houses that are not that well required within the Hazelmere or that area. So what have we got? We've got these houses building with no affordables, so it means they're going to be expensive, 4-bedroom houses, particularly in Hazelmere. It's very difficult for anybody to actually buy those because they're the wrong bedrooms. So I've got to say that I am against this application. It is just spreading. I would like to see either refusal or perhaps 1 or 2, but certainly not 6. That is wrong. It really is in this area. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we are now open for debate. Councillor Weldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Rubini and indeed the resident have already pointed out that this was strongly opposed at Hazelmere Town Council, and I completely concur with that for a number of reasons. First of all, the notes by the officer point out that this is countryside beyond the green belt. I also note from the presentation that this is outside the settlement boundary. Outside the settlement boundary means that it is in conflict with the neighbourhood plan. Furthermore, Councillor Rubini has pointed out that the objection and indeed the resident to the nature of the application, which has come in by stealth. I know that there's nothing we can't control. That's not a factor, but it does great. However, I'm really concerned that this is outside outside the settlement boundary. For those who don't know Haslemere, we really have two settlements. There's the main settlement around the town itself, and then up the hill is Hindhead. And the road from the town up to Hindhead is in fact a particularly attractive scenic drive. I was really surprised when it came to the town that this is not designated as a natural landscape or AONB, because it really is both natural and very beautiful. It's wooded, and as you go up the hill on the left-hand side, you can see through the trees to some ponds. Really very beautiful landscape. Unfortunately, not so designated. The nature of this application, having come in stealth by stealth, is that we had one development, one small development, which was approved a few years ago. Then we've had a further, that was taken as precedent for another one, and then another one. My concern is that has now established a firm pattern, creating precedent for future development, all the way up this road, which all of which, as I say, really is natural beauty landscape, whether it's so designated or not. I also agree firmly with Councillor Rubini that the nature of the houses, 4 bedrooms, is really not what we need in Haslemere. I want to repeat now something that I said yesterday in winding up my presentation to the appeal hearing for Scotland Park. We know that Haslemere needs housing. We have a critical need for housing, but we need the right housing at the right price in the right place. And I don't believe that this application meets any of those criteria. I am firmly opposed to this application, and I urge you to consider those objections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White, and then Councillor Keane.
My colleague councillor, I'm totally in agreement with what he's just said. And it's a bit of a touche because we're here talking about this particular development. 4 bedrooms within the town area is just not appropriate for families to be moving into those areas. So I totally agree, and I will vote against this.
Thank you, Councillor Keane, and then Councillor Gale.
Thank you. I am one of the ward councillors, so I hope I'm able to express what I feel about this application, Chair, if that's all right.
Madam Chairman. May I assist?
Yes, Councillor Rubini.
As you know, we as ward council can speak at the beginning and the end.
Yes.
Perhaps Councillor King would like to speak at the end, taking up her.
That's a good idea. Yep, thank you very much. Councillor Gale.
That came round quickly. There are many things wrong I can see with this. It's outside of the settlement. It looks to me like overdevelopment because of the number of houses and the number of bedrooms contained within. If you think that there are going to be 8 homes, you could have as many as 32 vehicles accessing onto that very busy road.
This application is for 6.
Sorry, yes, when it accumulates with the 6, we would have 8, which could then have 32 vehicles, even more maybe, accessing onto a very busy and quite dangerous road. Anybody that's driven down there in the winter will know that that's quite a dangerous road. The councillors have mentioned water runoff. It is a high bank, and all of that water goes across that road, which once the landscape is developed and it has hard standing all over it, I think the runoff for the water would possibly be more. The photograph that was shown of the existing and the entrance shows very high banks in the front on the road edge, but the artist's impression shows those banks gone, and so you can see all of the housing peppered across the hillside. So it does make them very obtrusive, and I don't think I would like to see that happen. I think there are concerns here, and I think it's the wrong type of housing and it's in the wrong place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weldon. Your microphone is on. Claire, would you be so kind as to address some of the issues?
Yeah, so members, we're hearing a number of concerns. So maybe if I can just advise you on some of the points that have been raised in terms of whether or not they would amount to robust reasons for refusal. So I've just made a list. I think I've covered all the points, but we've had this sort of the issue of principle that it's outside the development boundary. But as the case officer has already identified, and as the report identified, we've already granted planning permission on this. So we've already accepted the principle of development outside the settlement boundary on this site. The issue of lack of affordable housing has been provided, but because of the number being proposed, it doesn't trigger the need to provide affordable housing. So that in itself would not be a sustainable reason for refusal. The issue of precedent has been raised, but obviously, precedent in planning law is only when there's an identical situation. And given the character that you've described, I think it would be unlikely that we would be able to successfully defend a reason for refusal on precedent. We've heard a number of members talking about 4-bedroom houses and there being no need. Members, can I just remind you that your housing number, the number that is now, our annual requirement is 1,414 dwellings per annum. And that is a mix of dwellings so that we can continue to provide mixed and balanced communities, meet a range of housing needs, and also support economic growth by providing homes for a range of people that will in part provide the workforce for jobs within the area. The process houses, as members know, is not a material consideration. Members, I think you must make a decision whether you think this is really overdevelopment, and if you were looking to frame a reason for refusal, when we get to an appeal, how we would demonstrate that this was overdevelopment of this site. And finally, the last issue that has been raised is around highway safety. Members, we don't have a highway objection on this from the county highway surveyor. So again, members, you would need to reflect what evidence it is you would present in terms of that highway safety issue. We have heard from one of the speakers this evening that there was an accident in the vicinity of the site. Sorry, I'm having to take my glasses on and off because I'm looking at my notes. The vicinity of the site in the very recent past, it sounds like in the last week, but that would have to be balanced by the fact that you haven't got an objection from the county as the highway authority. And drainage as a final issue, again, the report and the case officer will confirm that there's no objection from the lead local flood authority, the county council, and that whilst there was some additional information that was required to satisfy the lead local flood authority, there is no objection on the matter of drainage per se.
Councillor Gale.
Thank you for letting me ask something else. On the Surrey County Council highways, it says following the receipt of the requested additional information, no objection was received subject to conditions. Could the case officer tell us what they actually requested? And do we know if they actually did a site visit or was it a desktop survey?
Thank you. Yes, they would have done a site visit. So they requested some enhanced visibility displays. So the existing access is going to be widened. They requested for longer visibility displays. Also, they required some swiftness analysis, so showing the tracking, including of a large vehicle, how they will enter and exit the site in a forward gear. So all this information has been submitted, and no objection was raised subject to conditions, which there are quite a few highway conditions already imposed.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's always annoying following the head of planning when you want to bring a bit of sanity into the conversation. I don't like this any more than anybody else does. I also don't like building on countryside beyond the green belt any more than anybody else does. But we have sat in this chamber and we have given permission for hundreds of houses on countryside beyond the green belt across the borough because we are so short of space and because our documents are out of date. And, you know, the Hazelmere neighbourhood plan, as far as I know, doesn't allocate sites, so 14 doesn't click in. So we're down to paragraph 11 and the tilted balance. We've already given permission for this site. You know, you can drive down so many streets in Farnham and say, you know, this ought to be designated more highly than it is, but we can't. It isn't. You know, it is countryside beyond the green belt, and that is the reason that Cranley, Alfold and Farnham have been clobbered, because that's what we've got all around our town. We don't have the luxury, if you like, of anything national landscape or a green belt. So here on this site, you know, yes, you know, I can see that this will change the character of the site. Of course it will. Any building on this site would. But it is very close to other building. It's not like one of these green fields totally on the outskirts of Farnham that was being sacrificed because and his inspector just says, oh, it's countryside beyond the green belt, you know, no special protection. So I do think we have to be realistic about this. I agree with everything everyone says, but I think in planning terms, we have to accept this. I really do. I'm sorry about that because it goes against the grain. But, you know, we have already it's already a site in principle for development. Yes, perhaps some of the style is not to everyone's liking, but I really can't see that we've got any reason to turn it down. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor White, and then
yeah, could I just a question to Assistant Director of Planning, really? Just help us with what would constitute overdevelopment. Could we just expand a bit on that? Is that possible?
So members, I think in terms of overdevelopment, if you were, and we got, maybe we could just put this slide back up, Lana. Sorry, just to bear with a moment because it might be easier to talk to the slide for you as members. Oh no, and at this moment we've locked ourselves out of the system. Apologies.
No, I'm just trying to get back to sharing.
Okay, so we've got that back on the screen, which I think is helpful. So members, if maybe we were dealing with a row of terrace, so if you had continuous terrace all the way along the site, I mean, obviously nobody'd ever promote a scheme of that nature. And so there was a continuous wall of development, you might be minded to think that that would be an overdevelopment of the site because of the sort of the form of the development, the continuity of built form with no gaps, no visual breaks, and the way that form of development would sit on that site that, you know, clearly from the photographs we've seen and also from the topological survey that has a slope to it. You might conclude that, but again, you know, members, what I'm seeing in front of my eyes is a scheme that has 6 units on, and accepting they are relatively large units, but they're still spaciously sited on the site with quite significant gaps between those buildings, long back gardens, the ability for good landscaping to be built into the scheme so that those new dwellings would sit comfortably within the topography of the site and also the landscape of the surrounding area. If you could got the photo montage, maybe.
The street scene?
Yeah, the street scene. So again, you know, what you would see there is development that again has that separation. The landscaping would, you know, break any concept of overbearing development, continuous roof lines, and obviously the way that it's sited on the site, your sort of 6th unit is then at right angles to the other 5. So members, that's what I'm describing that I'm seeing. I'm not describing a site that's so heavily developed that I would be professionally advising you that it was an overdevelopment of the site.
Thank you. Councillor White, do you have something else to?
Well, yeah, I just thank you for that response. So what we're saying is it's not to do with density of occupation, it's visual appearance. I think that's what we're saying. Can I just come back after?
Yeah, it's how, if you were having to defend, if you said it's overdevelopment of a site, you'd have to really intrinsically describe how that development looks and feels like overdevelopment of a site.
So it is the Waverley design plan or design criteria which allows this type of density of development with 4-bedroom properties. Am I correct? It's not something that we can judge as councillors, planning committee. It's already been approved through the design plan. Is that correct?
No. So it's a judgment whether or not you as a planning committee, us as officers, or indeed an inspector looking at this at a later date, thinks that those properties laid out in the way proposed in the design, form, height, scale would represent an overdevelopment of that site. It's a judgment that you make as a planning committee, that we're making as planning officers.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, could we just see that other plan, that the sort of the location of the site, you know, the one with the other things around, just to get.
Councillor Weldon, do you have a new point?
Thank you. I want to add to my previous comments by referring to section 12 of the officer's report on page 72. The heading for that section is the size, scale and design of the proposal and the impact on the character and appearance of the street scene and the wider area. So let's talk specifically about the street scene. The current street scene is woodland, and how are we wanting to replace the current street scene with a row of houses? Further, the NPPF states that planning decisions should ensure that developments are sympathetic to the local character, including the built environment and landscape setting, and the landscape setting is woodland. Going on, the local character of the area is woodland. And on the next page, policy 6 of the design statement says it should be sympathetic to the environment, which is woodland. And again, the next paragraph, countryside beyond the green belt state the area should be the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside shall be recognised and safeguarded. I think this proposal simply does not do that. Thank you.
Members, just to help you in your judgments this evening, and to reinforce that planning permission has already been granted on this site for the development you see before you. So 2 plots, 2 substantial houses with drives, garages, hard surfing, etc. So you've already established a principle of residential development on this site. The site itself is a residential curtilage already. It is not woodland. It is a residential curtilage, and planning permission has already been granted for what Dana's just put up on the site, and the 2 adjoining properties on the adjoining site.
Thank you, Claire. Just a little gentle reminder from me, we have to have strong grounds should we want to object. I don't see any other speakers, so Councillor Keane, would you like? I beg your pardon, Councillor Sullivan, have I missed you?
Sorry, no, I was just going to ask, and I think I know the answer about determining the application in front of us rather than future applications coming through. But just a question, that is quite a sizable plot that could be designated for future, not designated, but future applications coming through. So this potentially may not be all the houses we see. And the fact that we've set precedent for 2 and now most likely more, I'm sure that this may not be the end. We've seen multiple applications come through. There's a fairly sizable lot, and therefore potentially may not be all of the houses that ultimately get proposed here or applied for here. But I assume the answer is going to be we can only determine the application in front of us.
I think you've answered your question. That is correct. Yep. So Councillor Keane, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you. We've had a huge debate on this, and most of what's been said is what I would have talked about. But what I would say is that the 2 houses that have already been granted have already started to ruin the street scene, and it's so out of keeping you would not believe. The pictures that we've seen do not do justice to the height of the hill that those houses are going to be sitting on. They are right up high, and they will be looking right down into the houses below. There's also there's a concern about the creeping development, the fact that we started off with 2, we now have 6. How many more? And it is going to drastically change that street scene. As Councillor Weldon said, it is a wooded scene, but there is now a huge gap in the middle, which is now going to extend by another 4 houses. So there is quite a concern there. We also have to consider that Haslemere has every development that comes into Haslemere, every application almost is for huge houses. Affordable houses don't come into it anymore when they're looking at doing an application for something like this where somebody has sold their property to a developer. We don't see very much affordable housing coming into this. The other thing I would like to say is the traffic survey. As Councillor Gale has said, for anybody that lives in Haslemere, we know full well that that road is awful. And when the tunnel is shut, it's even more awful. And we have had many accidents along the Hindhead Road. So Surrey say there's not a problem, but then Surrey often say there isn't a problem. So I don't tend to believe what they say now, I'm sorry. So the other issue is flooding. And I know they're talking now about permeable groundwork. But the flooding that came off of those 2 houses, just the 2, flooded that road, and it flooded down into Frensham Hall into a very low-lying area, and the flooding was shocking because we actually were called down there as ward councillors. And there's also the consideration that any of the flooding that comes off of that development is going into lakes where there are fish. So you've also got the environmental issue as well. So, I would urge councillors to think very carefully about what they're granting here, because if you haven't seen it, I suggest you go along to the Hindhead Road and you have a look at what's started already and what there is to come. And I understand about we need homes, yes, we need houses, but we need houses in the right place, something that has to be really seriously considered here. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have no other speakers, and we have a recommendation in front of us that, subject to conditions and the completion of the Section 106 agreement for the biodiversity net gain and associated monitoring, permission be granted. When lights show, please vote.
Thank you. We have 7 in favour, no abstentions and 5 against, so therefore it's carried.
Thank you. So we move on now to the TPO, which is Trees on Long Garden Way in Farnham. And this is to consider an objection to one of the trees, so whether or not we want to agree the modification or not.
Good evening, committee. I'm here to present a TPO. Is it sharing? This isn't the way, is it? No, that's come back to the beginning of the whole slide. I think this is the way. There we go. Okay, got there. Convention. Apologies. So we've got a tree preservation order which was served along Long Garden Way. And the purpose of this presentation is for the committee to consider an objection to the TPO and determine whether the order should be confirmed with or without the modification by the exclusion of one tree, which is T11 London Plain. It is the officer's recommendation that the tree preservation order be confirmed without modification. So here we have a plan of the trees, and we can see their setting within central Farnham area, just outside of the conservation area. The order relates to 11 individual trees. We've got 2 birch trees and the rest are London Plain trees. And we can see the aerial view here, so you get an idea of the canopy cover. The tree that the objection relates to is T11, which is just at the far eastern end of the tree line. So the order was made on the 11th of October last year, and it was made because the council had received a tree control check from an arborist, and that check revealed that there were no restrictions on those trees. So essentially, it could be detrimentally lopped or even removed. So officers attended the site and did an amenity assessment of those trees, and they were found to present significant public amenity because of their position in a busy public area, and also their linear arrangement confers quite important contribution to the character of the area. So it was considered expedient in the interests of public community to make the trees subject of a provisional order. So we've got some photos to give you an idea of the trees here. Again, this tree on the left-hand side of the image is the London Plain. That's the tree that the objection relates to. Here we have the 2 birch trees, T9 and T10. And then we've got a view of the linear feature there, which kind of separates the retail areas and car parking in a central town location. So during the representation period of the order, 1 objection was received, and that objection is maintained. The main points of objection are summarised as that the objection was made by a local resident, and the main points are summarised as that the trees are causing seasonal nuisance with leaf fall and bark and debris, and also the proximity of the tree to the dwellings and the footpaths the tree is also causing shading. Recently approved pruning, so there's been a couple of applications on these trees already, which have gained consent, and one of those was for selected pruning of the tree. The objector thought this may unbalance the shape of the tree. Also the tree's built-up setting is detrimental to the tree health because the built environment is pretty harsh on lots of trees, and the tree is causing damage to adjacent surfaces and structures. So again, there's the picture of the tree which relates to the objection, which is T11. So the officers carefully considered the objection and provided some response to those concerns. So trees are naturally shedding organisms, and the clearing of leaves and twigs, etc., is considered to be a normal maintenance of property, and those who reside in properties are reasonably expected to be able to arrange for it to be done. The T11, the objection tree, presents a reasonable relationship with regard to the dwellings, and the periphery of that tree has got at least 10 metres clearance from adjacent built form of the dwellings. And then the tree's got a westerly or southwesterly orientation to the nearest dwellings, but that separation distance of 10 metres is unlikely to cause unacceptable levels of shading. And then with regards to the unbalanced crown resulting from a recently approved application, selective pruning is often less detrimental to tree health and also the amenity value of a tree than whole crown pruning. And then with regards to the tree's built environment being detrimental to its health, outwardly it presents a normal healthy condition, and therefore it appears to be tolerant of its setting its time. Also, London plane trees are pretty tolerant of the urban environment, which is why they are often prevalent in the urban environment. And also, the last point was in relation to surfacing distortions close to the tree. So there are lots of options to reinstate surfacing close to trees which are resistant to distortion. So in itself, it's not an overriding reason not to convert with that tree. So the planning consideration, basically the council, if it deems to them in the interest of public amenity, can make trees subject to a tree preservation order. So the key planning considerations are the amenity value of the tree and the expediency of the tree. So in this case, the trees and their linear arrangement along Long Garden Way are considered desirable and a significant mature feature in the landscape, which offers good public amenity. This officers did a quantitative assessment of the trees, so we've got which backs that up basically, and then the removal or detrimental management of the trees will significantly impact the amenity of the area, so that relates to the expediency of the order. So in conclusion, the objections raised against the inclusion of T11 in the confirmation of the tree or preservation order are not substantiated and don't override the public amenity that tree offers and the threat to its long-term retention if it were not to be protected. So the recommendation is again that the TPO number 28/24 be confirmed without modification, thereby including T11 in the confirmed order.
Thank you for a very clear and full report. I think it's very good for this committee to understand about TPOs because they are like natural cathedrals, aren't they? Councillor Coburn.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, no, I agree with the inclusion of T11 on this in this TPO. We have, of course, those of us who've been in Farnham some time, lost a lot of trees from the Hart car park, and we were told at the time that they had been planted badly, you know, and we did replace one or two. We didn't, but you know the experts did. But we have lost a fair bit of tree cover from that area over the years. And there was a time when you look down on the Hart car park, the lower Hart, And, you know, it was more or less, as you say, covered in trees, lovely sort of canopy. So these form, you know, a lovely avenue as you sort of drive along or walk along to get to the back end of Waitrose. And yes, I mean, all of them, I think, have a value. If you come up the sort of coming, I don't know which direction I'm coming from, Castle Street, round the back and round. I mean, the tree in question, T11, is what you see. I mean, it is, you know, the entrance, as it were, to the Upper Hart car park, but it then leads you round the corner into the other trees. So, you know, I think this particular run of trees is essential to the character of this area. And as we know, this is so close to the conservation area. So anything we can do that maintains the character of that, I think we should support this full TPO. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if it wasn't for this line of London plane trees and 2 birch trees, we would have one giant car park. We have the Upper Hart, we have the Lower Hart, and they are separated by a linear line of trees, which, as well as the amenity value that TPOs are all about, they serve a purpose apart from being attractive and dividing up the car parks. And that value is the fact that they are they soak up carbon. They soak up carbon through the bark, and then the bark then says, sorry, I give up, and the bark falls off and it reforms another bark. So they do have an environmental impact, and tree 11, in fact, is the best example of all of the trees that are on this road. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers, but, oh, Councillor White.
Sorry, Chair. Every day's a school day. It has been for me tonight, I'll tell you. I don't understand why this has come to committee. I mean, I understand that this was left off the original TPO and it's now being included, and there has been one letter of objection. And there's obviously a technical reason why we have to have it, but can I just ask that question as it's relevant? Thank you.
Yeah, the technical reason is within the Constitution, certain powers are delegated to me as head of planning. And one of the powers that isn't delegated to me is to deal with the confirmation of a TPO where there's an objection. And therefore it is a committee decision, and hence our discussion of this matter this evening.
Thank you. Well, I just would like to say one little thing, that the objection to T11 is due to shading, whereas I think that's an advantage. So I don't see any other speakers. We have a recommendation that we agree this without the modification. When lights show, please vote. Unanimously carried.
Unanimously voted.
Yep. Thank you very much. So that is the end of our meeting. Thank you.